All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into NTPC Green Energy Limited.
Okay.
They're a really interesting company, I think, in the Indian renewable energy space.
Yeah.
Now you're thinking about maybe getting in on the IPO.
Right.
So we're going to kind of break down their business model, the industry, what the future might hold for them.
Yeah.
And we're going to use a couple of sources here to help us guide our discussion.
Okay.
We've got their draft red herring perspectives, the DRHP.
Right.
And we've got some expert commentary to help us kind of unpack some of this.
Sounds good.
So to kind of set the stage,
Yeah.
this company, NTPC Green Energy Limited, they're a subsidiary of NTPC Limited,
Right.
which, if you don't know, is a huge GE company.
It's massive.
India's largest power provider.
Largest energy provider. Yep.
So they're not coming from nowhere.
Yeah. No, they're not a scrappy startup.
Exactly.
They've got this huge parent company behind them.
And they're laser focused on renewables.
Renewables, yep.
So what's the deal there?
Well, what's interesting is that, they're not trying to do it all.
Right.
What they're really focused on is being an owner and operator of these renewable energy projects.
Gotcha.
Specifically solar and wind.
Okay.
And they're very clear about what they don't want to do.
Right.
We actually have a clip here from an NTPC representative talking about this.
Oh, let's hear it.
Okay.
Okay.
This is from their presentation to investors.
All right.
Here we go.
Okay.
Audio clip, please.
Wow. So they're calling it the fast-changing technology?
Right?
So they don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of actually constructing these projects or manufacturing like the solar panels?
Exactly. They want to avoid what we call the technology treadmill.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
The technology treadmill.
Constantly having to reinvest in the newest tech.
Yeah.
And it's smart because in renewables, things are changing so quickly.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So they're sidestepping that.
So they're kind of like the property managers of the renewable energy world.
No, I like that.
Right? Like they get the land.
Secure the land.
Get the permits.
Get the permits.
And then they bring in, the specialists.
Yeah, they bring in the partners.
To do the actual construction.
To deal with the technology, the ever-changing technology.
And avoid those risks.
And avoid all those risks, right?
That's interesting.
And think about it.
Yeah.
This also allows them to leverage their parent company's experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
NTPC Limited, they've been doing these large-scale energy projects forever.
Right.
So they know how to navigate the complexities of site selection permits approvals.
It's like they've got a seasoned guide.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the background, we've got kind of a savvy business model.
Right.
What about the industry itself?
So the industry outlook is really promising.
Okay.
India has set this goal.
Yeah.
50% of its energy from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030.
Wow.
And the DRHP highlights that renewable energy capacity has been growing rapidly.
So they're kind of riding a wave here.
Exactly.
It's not just good intentions.
No, it's not just about good intentions.
The market's headed this way.
The market itself is moving in this direction.
So what's driving that?
It's driven by a couple of things.
Yeah.
Of course, India's commitment to fighting climate change, but also the fact that renewable energy technologies are becoming cheaper.
Right.
It's getting more and more competitive with fossil fuels.
So it's like the sweet spot where the environmental goals and the economic realities are aligning.
Exactly. And that creates this powerful tailwind for companies like NTPC Green Energy.
Right. They're poised to grab a big piece of this pie that's growing.
That's right, a rapidly growing pie.
Rapidly growing.
But they're not just sitting back and waiting.
Right.
The DRHP talks about their plans for the future.
Okay.
And specifically how they're going to use the money from this IPO.
Oh, interesting.
A big chunk of it's going to go towards acquiring or developing new projects.
Okay.
So they're fueling their ambition to be a major player.
So they're not content with what they have.
No, they want more.
They want to grow.
They want to grow.
And they even have this whole section called Our Strengths.
Yeah.
Where they highlight their parent company's experience.
Yeah.
Their strong financial position.
Right.
And the fact that the Indian government has these really supportive policies, they seem pretty confident.
Well, they've got reason to be.
Yeah.
They've already secured a number of projects.
Okay.
They've got a strong pipeline going.
So it's not just talk.
Yeah.
They're walking the walk.
Exactly.
They're getting things done.
Yeah. And that brings us to another key factor.
Okay.
Government support.
Okay. It's more than just sunshine and wind powering this industry, right?
Yeah, you got it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the government is really actively encouraging this development of renewable energy.
Oh, Caso.
Lots of ways.
Yeah.
tax breaks, subsidies.
Mhm.
They're creating these things called solar parks.
Solar parks.
Yeah.
What's that?
These huge tracts of land that are dedicated to solar projects.
Oh, wow.
It's like ready-made renewable energy hubs.
So it's not just a nudge. It's like
It's a big push.
a big push in the right direction.
It de-risks projects for these companies.
Right.
Makes the whole process smoother
Yeah.
and more attractive to investors.
So government support's a huge plus,
Absolutely.
but it's not a guaranteed thing forever, right?
Well, that's true.
What happens if the government changes their mind?
That's one of the risks they have to navigate.
Right.
It's a reminder that they're operating within a larger political and regulatory landscape.
Okay, so government support's great,
Yeah,
but you can't just bank on that forever.
exactly.
Okay, so we've got the backdrop,
Yeah.
major parent company, smart business model,
Yep.
booming industry with government support,
It's all there.
and a company with some serious ambition.
That's right.
But we got to look at the other side of the coin here.
Yeah.
What are some of the potential downsides they have to navigate?
Yeah. Let's dive into those risks.
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so let's start with something we kind of touched on earlier.
Great.
Their decision to avoid getting into manufacturing and construction.
Right.
It's smart in that it allows them to sidestep that technology treadmill we were talking about.
Yeah.
But it also means they're pretty heavily reliant on these third-party suppliers
Okay.
for things like solar panels and wind turbines.
So while they avoid getting bogged down in that constantly changing tech,
Right.
they're kind of at the mercy of the companies that do make it.
Exactly.
So what's the downside there?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
It exposes them to all these potential disruptions.
Like what?
Supply chain issues,
Yeah.
price fluctuations, even quality problems.
Oh, yeah, like what happened during the pandemic.
Exactly,
Right,
with the global supply chains.
All those delays, skyrocketing prices.
Yeah.
That kind of volatility could really hurt their projects.
And their bottom line.
Absolutely.
So is it better to be stuck on the technology treadmill
Right.
or be at the mercy of these global supply chains? That's the tough question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a balancing act.
What else?
Okay, so another big one.
Yeah.
Customer concentration.
Oh,
They're heavily reliant on a few big customers,
okay.
primarily government entities.
Right. Those big, juicy government contracts.
Exactly.
But what happens if that dries up?
Right. What if those policies change?
Yeah.
What if the funding disappears?
Yeah, it's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
It is a little bit.
Even with the government support, it still seems risky.
They do acknowledge this in the DRHP,
Okay.
but it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Okay, what else?
Well, then there are just the classic risks of these large-scale infrastructure projects.
Right.
Land acquisition,
Yeah.
permitting delays, regulatory changes.
It's funny because, like, on the one hand, the Indian government seems like they're really pro-renewable energy.
They do.
But I imagine, like, actually getting stuff done on that scale
Right.
involves a lot of bureaucracy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Acquiring land in India is notoriously complex. It's a lengthy process.
Yeah.
Tons of stakeholders' legal hurdles.
Right.
And even with government support,
Yeah.
permits can get delayed. Regulations can change.
So it's not as easy as just, like, build it and they will come.
No, not at all.
There's a lot of hoops to jump through,
There's a lot of navigating to do,
even in a favorable environment.
even with the wind at your back, so to speak.
Okay, so we've got land acquisition issues, permitting delays,
Right.
regulatory changes, anything else.
Yeah. And all of that's made even more challenging by the competition.
Oh, right, the competition.
As more and more companies enter this renewable energy market,
It's getting crowded.
it is.
So they're not just competing with, like, the traditional energy companies anymore.
No.
It's other renewable energy companies, too,
Exactly.
big and small.
It's a whole new ballgame.
It really is.
So that puts pressure on their margins.
Right.
They have to be really sharp on their pricing and how they execute these projects.
If they can't compete, they're going to lose out.
Two rivals. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got supply chain risks, the customer concentration, the bureaucratic hurdles the competition.
Yeah.
What about the risks that are, like, inherent to renewable energy itself?
Oh, that's a good point.
Like the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow.
Right. What we call resource variability.
Resource variability.
Yeah, the unpredictability of it all.
Okay.
It makes it really hard to ensure a consistent energy supply.
Right. Like, how do you plan around a cloudy day
Or a calm day.
if you're relying on solar or wind?
Yeah, exactly. That's where grid integration becomes so important.
Grid integration.
They need to connect their projects to the existing power grid
Okay.
in a way that guarantees reliability and stability.
So it's not enough to just, like, build these solar and wind farms,
No.
you got to make sure they can actually feed that energy into the system
Seamlessly.
without causing any blackouts or disruptions.
Right. And that can be a really complex and costly undertaking.
In what way?
Grid upgrades, sophisticated forecasting systems,
Yep.
energy storage solutions.
Wow. There's a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah, it's a lot to manage.
Does the DRHP address this at all?
They do. They talk about diversifying their portfolio
Okay.
across different regions.
So not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly, geographically and technologically.
And what about the grid integration?
They highlight their experience integrating renewable energy projects into the grid.
Okay.
They point to their parent company's expertise in this area.
So they're saying, we've got this.
Essentially.
Okay, so even though there are all these potential problems, they're not just ignoring them.
No, they're trying to get ahead of the curve.
Okay, that's good.
And they're being transparent about the risks, which I think is important.
Yeah.
But there was one thing that really stood out to me in the risk factors section.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit before.
What's that?
Their acknowledgement of political risk.
Right. What if the government changes their mind?
Exactly.
But they really double down on that point.
They emphasize that even with this current supportive environment,
Yeah.
there's always a chance a new government could come in.
Right.
Shift priorities.
Maybe even favor traditional energy sources over renewables.
It's possible.
So they're acknowledging that they're not totally in control.
Right.
Even if they do everything else right.
Exactly. Those political winds can change.
Yeah.
And that's something investors need to factor in.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got the supply chain risks, customer concentration, bureaucratic hurdles competition,
The inherent challenges of renewable energy.
and then this overarching political risk.
It's a lot.
It is.
So how do we weigh all this?
Well, this is where we need to look at their financials.
Okay.
The DRHP has all the detailed financial statements,
Yeah.
but keep in mind this is a relatively young company. They were incorporated in 2020.
So their track record's a little limited.
Yeah, it is.
But what can we see from the data that we do have?
Well, their revenue growth is pretty impressive.
Mm.
They've seen a significant increase in revenue in the past few years.
So they're making money.
They are.
That's good, right?
It's a good sign.
But I imagine there's more to this story than just the top line.
Oh, for sure. We need to look at profitability.
Okay, profitability.
And that's where things get a little bit more complicated.
How so?
They've been profitable,
Okay.
but their margins are thin.
So they're making money, but not a ton of it.
That's right.
Why is that?
Well, part of it is the competitive landscape.
Okay.
You've got all these companies bidding aggressively for these projects,
Right.
which drives the prices down.
So it's kind of like a price war.
In a way, yeah.
But isn't the cost of renewable energy technology declining?
It is.
Shouldn't that help them?
It does, and it is contributing to their overall profitability.
Right.
But it's this constant balancing act.
Right.
The decreasing cost of the technology helps,
Yeah.
but the intense competition keeps those margins squeezed.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out as the industry matures.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've got revenue growth.
Mm-hmm.
Profitability is a bit of a question mark.
Okay.
What about their debt?
Oh, yeah, the debt.
I'm assuming they have a lot of it.
I would think so, given the nature of these big projects.
You're right. They do carry a significant amount of debt.
Okay.
They've relied heavily on borrowing to fuel their growth.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty common in this industry.
But that's not great, right?
Well, the good news is they're addressing it.
Okay.
A big chunk of the IPO proceeds
Yeah.
is earmarked for paying down that debt.
So they're using the IPO to kind of shore up their financial health.
Exactly.
That's a good sign, right?
It is. It shows they're aware of the issue.
Yeah.
And they're taking steps to fix it.
It's not just growth at all costs.
No, they're thinking long term.
About the sustainability of the business.
Exactly.
Okay, so strong revenue growth, that's good.
Right.
Those thin margins, the high debt levels.
Yeah,
Definitely things to watch.
for sure.
So how do you ultimately assess their financial situation?
It's a mixed bag, to be honest,
Okay.
but they're operating in this market that's just exploding.
Yeah.
And they are taking steps to address that debt.
Yeah.
So for investors who really believe in the long-term potential of renewable energy in India,
Yeah.
NTPC Green Energy Limited might be a really interesting opportunity.
Okay.
But it's not without its risks.
Right. No, investment is.
Exactly.
All right. So we've got the business model. We've got the industry outlook, the risks of financials.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is.
But ultimately, this all comes down to one question.
Okay.
Is NTPC Green Energy Limited a good investment?
$1 million question.
It is. And as always, the answer is
It depends.
it depends.
Right.
It depends on your individual investment goals, your risk tolerance.
There's no one-size-fits-all answer here.
Nope.
It's about aligning this potential investment with your own personal financial situation.
Exactly.
In your outlook.
Your outlook on the market, on the industry.
So how do you even begin to assess that?
Well, this is where that deep dive into the DRHP is so valuable.
Okay.
Really scrutinize their plans.
Yeah.
Their strategies, their track record.
Yeah.
Look at their management team. Do they have the experience or the expertise to navigate this complex landscape?
So it's about going beyond just the numbers.
It is.
Understanding the people.
Yeah.
The plans, the whole story.
The big picture.
And don't forget about your own personal situation.
Absolutely.
How does this investment fit into your overall portfolio strategy?
Are you looking for exposure to renewable energy, to the Indian market?
Think about diversification.
Diversification. Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
And your time frame.
Right. Are you a long-term investor?
Are you willing to ride out the ups and downs?
Because remember, renewable energy is still a relatively young industry.
It's going to be volatile.
It is. There's going to be bumps in the road.
Patience is a virtue.
Especially when you're betting on the future.
Okay, so aligning with your personal goals,
Yeah.
weighing the risks against the rewards. What else should listeners be thinking about?
Do your own research.
Oh, yeah.
Don't just take our word for it.
Don't just rely on the DRHP.
Talk to financial advisors. Read industry reports.
Get a well-rounded perspective.
Informed investors
Yeah.
are empowered investors.
I love that.
All right, so I think we've given you a lot to think about today.
Yeah.
We've explored the business model, the promising industry outlook, the potential risks, the financial performance.
It's been a good deep dive.
It had.
But we always encourage you to go deeper.
Absolutely.
Explore the DRHP.
Read those industry reports.
Talk to experts.
Yep.
The more informed you are, the better decisions you'll make.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into NTPC Green Energy Limited.
Of course.
We hope it's been helpful and insightful for you
Yeah.
as you navigate this world of renewable energy investing.
It's exciting.
It's exciting, but it's also a little bit turbulent sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
But that's what makes it so interesting.
It does.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It really is a fascinating story, isn't it?
It is, you've got this incredible growth story kind of unfolding in India's renewable energy sector.
Right.
But then you've got all these complexities.
Yeah.
And potential pitfalls.
There's a lot to consider.
It's
a real balancing act.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone looking at this IPO, it comes down to a few really key questions.
Oh.
Can they actually deliver on these ambitious promises?
Yeah, can they walk the walk?
Exactly. Can they navigate those risks effectively? And maybe even more importantly, does their success actually align with the overall direction that the renewable energy market is headed?
So it's not just about whether this particular company is going to succeed.
Right.
But whether the whole sector,
the whole industry
is headed in a direction that supports their growth.
That's a great point.
So they might have a great business model.
Yeah.
And a strong pipeline of projects.
Right.
But if the market fundamentals shift,
if the winds change, so to speak,
that could really impact their long-term prospects.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about things like government policies, technological advancements, global demand for renewable energy.
All of those things. Yeah.
So those are the
macro trends that can really make or break an industry. And for NTPC Green Energy, those trends are both a tailwind, but also a potential source of uncertainty.
Okay. So as an expert, how do you make sense of all of this? What are you watching for?
I'm really keeping a close eye on global trends in renewable energy investment.
Okay.
Is the money continuing to flow into the sector?
Okay.
Is India, holding its own as a major player in this space?
Right, because their success is really tied to India's success.
It is.
In attracting that investment.
Exactly. And I'm also watching for any kind of technological advancements.
Okay.
Are there breakthroughs on the horizon that could really shake things up?
Yeah.
Think about things like energy storage, grid integration, the efficiency of solar panels, wind turbines.
So even if they're avoiding that technology treadmill right now, they still need to be aware
of what's coming,
of how things might change.
Exactly.
Okay. And then what else are you watching?
Well, policy is huge.
Policy.
Both in India and globally. Are governments around the world continuing to support renewable energy?
Right. With those favorable policies and incentives.
Exactly. Because a change in those policies could really have a ripple effect.
Across the whole sector.
The whole sector could be impacted.
So it's not all sunshine and roses.
Well, there's a lot to be optimistic about,
No.
but it's really important to stay informed.
Right.
And be prepared for those potential shifts.
It's like you're navigating a ship.
It is.
In uncharted waters.
You need to have a clear destination, a solid plan.
Okay.
And you got to keep a watchful eye on the horizon.
Love that analogy.
I think that's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah.
For anyone who's thinking about investing in this company.
Do your research.
Do your research.
Weigh the risks and rewards.
Yep.
And be prepared for the journey.
That's it.
Okay, so we've unpacked their business model.
We have.
We've explored the industry outlook, delved into the risks.
We did.
Even considered like the bigger picture.
The macro trends.
The macroeconomic picture.
Yeah.
It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It has been.
But as always, we encourage you to go deeper.
Absolutely.
Explore that DRHP.
Read those industry reports.
Talk to experts.
Talk to experts.
The more informed you are,
yeah,
the better decisions you can make.
Knowledge is power.
All right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into NTPC Green Energy Limited.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and helpful as you navigate this exciting
and complex
and sometimes turbulent world of renewable energy investing.
It is.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning,
and keep asking those tough questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.